Jam out tunes to inviting somebody to talk. Gotta send them the link. It gives me a chance to get set up and you guys get to watch. That's what BTS is all about, right? Yeah. I wish it would give me a warning, but... Busy today. Number 2 of 3 today. Wow. It's kind of exciting though, waiting for them to show up, because it's like, lights, camera, action maybe? Soon? Alright, there she is.
Hi.
Alright, we can hear you. So the one thing I did forget to tell you, which I seem to forget to tell everyone, is I do have a video going. It is a video just of me.
Okay.
Behind the scenes type of thing, kind of getting set up and kind of like, this little stuff that people like to watch just in case they don't listen to the podcast. They want to go to YouTube to watch the video or need visuals for what's going on.
Sure.
Plus, it gives me a chance to, once I introduce you, I'll tell you a little secret/gift, and hopefully it's not patting myself too hard on the back, to what I give my guests. So.
Oh, okay.
So, all right. Everything's looking good. So I think we're good. All right. So today on this podcast, we are changing things up a little bit. As I usually do, or try to usually do, we've gotten lucky. Give a little gift, give a little surprise, a little fun to my guests that show up and graciously give their time to talk. Today, my special guest I've known for about 26 years. I mean, that, first of all,
Long time.
dating me, but I want to explain. So, I'm dressed the way I'm dressed because of her. We'll get into a little more detail once we introduce you and kind of get into a little bit. But all of this that you see is for my guest, who, like I said, I've known for 26 years. Went to high school with, and did some productions and musical stuff while in high school. And I think it was pretty much more of getting out of high school, we got closer, which is kind of weird and strange. But without further ado, please help me in welcoming Julie Traskaski.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Good to hear from you. If I
Yes.
do refer to her as Jules, that's just kind of rolls easier off the tongue. But wanted to give you a proper introduction.
Thank you. Thank you. I do prefer Jules, so go for it.
Excellent, excellent. But with that in mind, Jules is known for here in our house, at least, for a couple of things. One, I mentioned in our very first episode, which is her snail mail. She is on top of surprising us when we seem to need it, which is kind of kudos because it's not always like I'm posting like, oh, I'm sad and I need a card or I need light in my day, and a card just shows up. So, however, it's not just a card. It is always filled with the most glitter and confetti you could ever imagine. I feel like you inspired those cards that like shoot the butterflies and stuff out now. Have you seen that?
Right? Right. They also have like the glitter bombs that go off. I'm like, oh man, I could have marketed that.
See, one more step, and you could have done that. But she was also known for her luau's.
Yes.
When we were summertime would hit, and it was either a back to school or hey, we're home from college, or hey, let's just hang out, and she would get all the things from, at the time, growing up in the Midwest, it was Oriental Trading and before like Dollar General and Dollar Trees came out, but all the cool little gadgets like bubble blower, cookie cutting, sticker lay type stuff. So that's why I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt.
Love it.
Very festive. Very aloha with all the flowers, which I don't know. I'm sure she could name whichever the white and red flowers are called. Not sure, and my Chicago hat.
Nice.
She is in Chicago area where we grew up in McHenry. So
Yes.
so how you doing? Tell those that don't know you a little bit about yourself.
Oh boy, I feel like I'm in an interview. So I have known you forever. You're one of my longest friends I've had. And like you said, yeah, we knew each other in high school and we started hanging out. And then you went away to college in Iowa. And I think we went to like a football game, before you left. And I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I was crushed because we had kind of hung out all summer and it was fun. But we've maintained our friendship, and that's been awesome. So I love that.
Yeah.
Beyond our friendship, I do have two children, so I'm a mom,
Yeah.
and it's one of my greatest things I've done. My biggest accomplishments. Hopefully, I haven't failed them yet. They're still alive. They're still kicking.
Yeah.
So that's always a plus. But yeah,
Absolutely.
we're hitting junior high, so that's
Uh-oh.
going to be super fun. Super fun. I was not this bad when I was growing up, but I'm sure my mother could join in and pipe in and say, yeah, okay.
Yep. Karma comes around.
Yeah. And beyond that, my hobbies are, I love being outdoors, nature's hiking. I like riding my bike around. I enjoy baking, and occasionally I have a creative touch here and there. So I've been doing some rock painting.
Oh, cool.
Is my newest thing that I'm doing, as well as just painting canvases here and there.
Wow.
And yeah, just living life and
Channeling your
you know,
inner
I,
Bob Ross.
yeah. Well, it runs deep in the family. I have a lot of artists in my family. My
Yeah.
sister's an art teacher, and my aunt's a watercolorist. I don't know if that's a
Ooh.
thing, but she does a lot of watercolors, and my grandma, and so we have a lot of artists in the family. So I got some of the genes. Yay.
Yay. Well, that's good. That's awesome. And still enjoying the Chicago area. You take frequent trips up to Wisconsin to enjoy some of the nature and stuff up there. Fourth of July is kind of your era to go up there, or
Yeah, so yeah, my family has a place right off of Green Bay, the lake itself. It's
yes,
the
we don't
Green
want to
Bay.
go into Green Bay as Chicago people because that's
Yeah,
bad.
no, I have a soft spot for the Packers, I will say,
Yes, I
and
know. Everybody
Milwaukee
can't be
Brewers.
perfect.
Right. Well, you are a Cubs fan,
It's
so
true. It's true.
you know. So yeah, so we have a place about 20 minutes north of Green Bay that yeah, my family all go up. So we hit the big holidays, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. And then in between, we'll go up there occasionally. We'll go up like in the like a longer weekend if it's in the
Hmm.
winter, but it's more fun to float around and day drink in the lake than
Absolutely.
hang out in the freezing cold.
Yes, we are probably about 4 blocks away from the Chattahoochee River here, so we definitely know about the whole floating and
Nice.
enjoying the beauty of nature that's given to us. So
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And with that, I mean, we had so many. Again, with friends that I don't, that I still keep in touch with. I don't know when we became friends or when the first, you know, hey, here's where
Yeah,
I
I
met you
don't.
thing. And I feel like those. I said this on a previous podcast that usually when I can tell you like, oh, I met this person this time, or I know we became friends because of X, Y, Z. I'm 95% not friends with those people anymore. And it's not
Right.
on purpose. It's just,
Right.
it seems like the longer we go, my best friends kind of, I can't tell you. And so I feel like you're one of those where it's like you were just at the parties and we just talked, and then you happened to be at somebody's graduation or the football game or hanging out with somebody that I knew, and I'm like, oh, you know that? Oh, okay. Yeah, we've been friends forever. Like, how have I never
Right.
seen you? Like,
Right. Right. Yeah. Then we had, Joseph was the
yeah,
musical that
Joseph and
we
the
were
Amazing
in,
Technicolor
and
Dreamcoat. Yeah.
yeah, that was my favorite. Only one that I was ever part of. I don't sing, and it was my dance skills that got me that part. But
See, yeah. It was fun. It was actually the only musical that I was in high school too. Yes, I'm a professional actor, and 100 and something commercials now and movies and TV galore. But like, I didn't get into acting in high school because for stage wise, because I figured like, oh, I want to be a movie actor. I want to be on TV. I don't need the stage. And I was like, eh. And somebody just said, well, why don't? A good friend of mine was like, well, acting is acting. Like you can hone these skills. And I was like, yeah, I guess. And so I auditioned for one acts, got into those, and then they're like, oh, the musical. I'm like, I am not singing in front of people. And then did. And so we ended up doing that. But it was cool because, if anybody knows Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, it's such a huge cast. There's
yeah.
brothers, there's wives, there's pharaohs, there's bakers, and all these things, dance numbers. But it felt like a small cast. Like it felt like we had our own. It's high school, so we had our cliques. But it was just so
Right.
funny how they kind of blended, where these people would hang out, but then these people would hang out, and like one or two would end up at this person's house.
Yeah.
So I think it was pretty cool because I've met people through you and through them through you. That I keep in touch with
Right.
and know now, where it's just like, wow, I didn't think that was going to be such life changing, but.
Right.
And then, in all honesty, and I'm sure this will be another episode I have yet to do, or at this point in time, as you're watching this, I have yet to record a solo podcast for myself.
Oh.
But which could go into things such as this, where Julie was the first, and I call you properly now because of the tone of this. Julie was the first person I called after my dad called me to tell me that he had stage 4 cancer.
Yes.
It was the phone call you don't want to have, and I remember standing in my living room with my loving wife next to me, wanting to hug and hold me, and she did until I was like, I need to go away. I'm not a
Yep.
big when things are rough for me. I kind of want to be left alone. I need to collect things. Like even when Danelle and I argue or disagree, we go quiet, separate rooms, think about it before you say it. I don't want to. You can't take things back after you say them. So I'm kind of the same way when that hit. My automatic reaction, obviously was not expecting that, was to shut down and go for a walk, and then it was I need to call Julie. Like I don't know. I know why, but I don't know why. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And so that was just a testament to, I think it was, I needed somebody that knew the situation, but not enough, but not wasn't going to bombard you with like, oh, I completely understand and you don't, or advice when I didn't want it, just, all the things. So, and then that was a year of yikes, 2019. Because if you don't know or not, I'm born on Valentine's Day. I was supposed to be born on St. Patrick's Day. I was born a month early and 3 pounds and 13 ounces, and here I am 44 years later, and I'm not 3 pounds. But on Valentine's Day of that year was not a pleasant day for all of us. For a friend of mine, but your best friend,
Yeah.
Miss
Yeah.
Donna Rupp.
Yes,
So,
she ended up passing. She died that morning. Right after midnight. She had passed away after a couple years of on and off of fighting breast cancer, and then it went to her brain and her spine, and just having a rough go there for a while. But yeah, it's weird because it is that it's like the sadness that's attached to that day, and then it's also like, but I can celebrate you, and it's just kind of that weird opposite, the yin and the yang.
You try to find a balance. I mean, it truly is a definition of balance and everything, and you definitely have had a good. You're such a strong person, and you may not think so, or at times where things are kind of really hitting the fan hard, but just you've been able to help people with that loss of Donna in your life with other people. I know we talked a little bit earlier about you being able to help somebody that could discover something with them just because you are so open with feelings to be like, hey, I miss Donna, and hey, did you know? You were able to help somebody kind of find something on their own. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I had a friend. She's was part of my mom's group. She's out in Switzerland, and she was from Canada. And I just making posts about Donna, and just how much she meant. And Donna really, she's one of the most bravest people I know. She was definitely strong. She met her cancer diagnosis with a smile on her face, not because she, was happy to have that, but because she had that grace about her that, I'm going to go through this hard time, but, I'm going to document it, and I'm going to put that smile on my face, and I'm going to have some grace. Prior to her diagnosis, she did have a son, Jackson, who passed when he was 2 to brain cancer. Right. He made a huge impact in our small little northern, Illinois town, and getting the St. Baldrick's and pediatric cancer, donations with the high schools. The National Honor Society kids really, took on him, and he was kind of the mascot, before he passed. And, so it's Donna had a lot of her own tales, and but she did good, and she fought really hard, and so I obviously it's grief, and she was my best friend for over 30 years, and it's been hard and difficult, and so I post things on Facebook every now and then. I'm not a huge, like everybody knows, here's my life story.
Share everything, the food that you just ate,
Yeah, but every now and then, I'll share things because, it's me reaching out to say like, hey, I need an extra, just like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And so I had my friend from in my mom's group from Switzerland. She actually, from my stories of Donna, took extra care of her breast health. Donna had breast cancer, and she ended up, finding her breast cancer early due to that. She wrote me a really nice letter letting me know, like, hey, if you wouldn't have posted about Donna, I don't know that I would have caught it so early.
Oh, wow. So
I do think it's important to talk about things, no matter how hard they are or how uncomfortable it makes people. Yeah. I'm not uncomfortable about talking about the hard things anymore, because I think we need to, and so many people don't, because they're like, I don't want to be a burden, or, this is weird, or nobody wants to hear it. But
Yeah.
we do. That's how we really do connect with people and really do know that we're not alone.
Right. And I mean, and that's the whole point in this podcast is that connection, is to, whether it's something, maybe not as happy as losing somebody or going through something yourself, like today, or something happy, like, hey, you want to share to the world, we just had a baby, we just had this, I got a new job, I'm moving out, I'm doing this, or whatever. It's the connection. It's being able to relate and know that you're not alone. Because there are times, when I lost my dad, I got to a point where I didn't think I was ever going to get over it. I didn't know I didn't know very many people that lost a parent. And it's so, every loss is different, obviously, but like a parent is way different. And so I was like, this is never going to change. I'm never going to, I don't know, I'm just going to be And I got to a point where I started feeling bad when I did become happy. I didn't want to enjoy things because I couldn't go back and say, oh, let me call Dad and, tell him about this, or, this is what's happening in life. And so I think there is a time where you people have gone through it. You're not the first person to lose a parent or to lose a friend or to, be diagnosed with anything. But you feel like you're the only one at that time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so being able to talk about it not only shares and I'm the type of person too that when I hear myself say things, I'm like, ooh, did I just say that?
Right.
Okay, yeah, I should probably just do that. I just gave you advice. I should probably follow it, So, and it's challenging, and hopefully there are more good things in life than bad. But like you just mentioned, it was so cool how Donna flipped it. You can go into a realm of like, not poor me, I don't mean it in a belittling way, but like,
right,
here's life, leave me alone, I'm gonna die, whatever. And she didn't. And
no.
You almost didn't let her. I saw the post. Like I said, we've been friends forever and follow on social media, and you see smiles. Mm-hmm. Is it in a hospital room? Yeah. Is that optimal? No. But you can still smile. You can still have those conversations. You can still have the things, do the things that you can. So I've always liked that about you, where you are the light. It's that light where, again, every time a card shows up here, it could just be a random day where I'm feeling fine, but your card shows up, I'm like, gosh, she's the only one that writes cards anymore.
It's all the glitter that's blinding you. That's
yes. And I love it. And it helps me just even, if you want to go deep, but, it reminds me that it's that time. A good friend of mine that we'll have on the show eventually, taught me when we first met, he remembered every word I said. He really listened, and he didn't like stare at you and like, oh, I'm trying to memorize everything you're saying. But like, he was the first person that when I was in my truck picking up his friend from the airport, and they got into the truck with us, he gave that person my biography. And it just like, this is Chris. Oh, nice to meet you. I'll drive us to your hotel. And he was just like, yeah, he's been an actor for so long, and his dad. I'm like, holy cow! I've never heard my biography told to me before.
Right.
So, but it's that, and it taught me to listen. It made me be in the moment, like I am, here with you, and you have taught me that to kind of feel what you got to feel, but look at it. Maybe there's something in it. So thank you for that, first and foremost. Yeah, and it's cool. It's very ironic in my eyes that the luau and the bright colors are your thing, because that is very fitting. So now you're here today for kind of we'll keep it as it goes. I let things go as they go, where the conversation goes and all that sort of stuff. But today's going to be a little more of the helpful, serious-ish tones to hopefully reach out for those of you guys listening and watching, on video here. If you don't want to listen to things, you can see my bright colors and envision. You'll see Julie's picture eventually when we post this. But you got some news a little while ago, and our life kind of has a bump, and you get to fix that bump here within the next week or so, or a couple days actually.
Yeah.
What's that bump?
Yeah, so the big C word, cancer. I was diagnosed in October of 2022 with thyroid cancer. I'll give you a little background of how it kind of all came to be. I'm going to be kind of boring here with some medical stuff
No, I
because,
mean, and it's important to have knowledge if people don't know what a thyroid is. I mean, we all, I think,
yes,
at this point know what cancer is, but
right,
because there's so many different variations of like every cancer does not mean you're dying. So
correct.
I think education is important.
Yes. So I was not educated on what a thyroid was. So to back up a little bit, I had to do IVF to have my children.
Okay.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned through that by being open that you kind of find a community of people who have gone through IVF and similar, fertility treatments. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to have that community. So my body didn't know what to do when I was pregnant, and it was very high risk, very complicated.
Okay.
Every single time I went to the doctor, which I felt like I was going weekly, I had blood draws. I hated needles. It took me forever to not pass out to
No
get
tattoos for you. Got it.
yeah, no tattoos. That's a whole nother story about
Yes.
tattoos,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I had gestational diabetes. Shocker. Something else wrong in the pregnancy. But so gestational diabetes, a lot of people think diabetes happen because people are overweight or they're not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to diabetes, yes, sometimes that is true. People
Right.
are not eating the best foods or things like that. But it is genetics play a role in it. Hormones play a role in it,
Gotcha.
and your body and how well other things are functioning. So it's
Right.
not always, oh well, you just change your diet and everything's fine.
Right.
With pregnancy, when you have gestational diabetes, it can be a placenta issue,
Okay.
as well as hormones. And your thyroid, guess what, is all a part of hormones. So
Yep.
I'm kind of able to kind of connect dots, now that I can kind of look back on things
Mm-hmm.
to where I am now, to where it all began. So I was sitting in the endocrinologist's office because diabetes is an endocrine part of your endocrine system.
Okay.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably saying that wrong.
Nope. So far, well, to me, it's good. So we're good.
And so I'm sitting there, and the endocrinologist comes in. He's like, "Hey," and then he goes, "So how about that thyroid?" And I was like, "Hi, how about that thyroid? Like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about?
Did I win
Like,
something?
what's on me? Like, what are you seeing?" And apparently, just by looking at my neck, he could see that I had a thyroid issue.
Oh wow. Like
So
physically looking at your neck, like
yeah, he could
it's not
just
like an
see my
X-ray
neck,
or
and he
something.
could see that there's something with my neck. He knew right away something was wrong with my thyroid. So from there, we did ultrasounds. I had a biopsy. It's just a fine needle biopsy. You just go in, they numb you. That's the part that hurts the most, is the numbing stuff. And then they put a really thin needle in there, and they just poke it a couple times to, get whatever they're needing to get.
See if it talks back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like 29 or 30 weeks pregnant with my oldest. And as I'm waiting for the pathology report for the biopsy to come back, my endocrinologist was like, we're planning on taking your baby early. You're going to have to do surgery. You're going to have to do radiation. You won't be able to be around your baby.
Oh wow.
You have to isolate. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh,
All the
wait,
things,
what?
yeah.
I thought I was here for gestational diabetes. Like, we talk about insulin and diet. Like, why are we talking about surgeries and being away from my baby? So,
Right.
of course, I was, freaking out.
Yeah.
So biopsy came back. It was actually benign. The endocrinologist was pretty shocked. He was like, I thought for sure this was going to be cancer. And so he was like, you have two choices. Either we take it out and you remove it, or we can wait and watch. So I was young, I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby. I'm like, no, I don't want to go without my thyroid. I don't even know what you're talking about. Like,
Right.
I need to do research, and I have to, figure this out. Like, I don't, all I knew was that my, thyroid had something to do with my metabolism.
Right.
So I was like, oh my gosh, so I did some research and I decided at that point, like, I don't want to remove it. I don't want to be on meds forever. You hear these horror stories of people gaining a ton of weight, having to regulate their meds, and it's just blood work after blood work. And, it wasn't what I wanted to do. So
disruptions in life. Just having a baby, you kind of want to live normal here.
Yeah. So we waited and watched it, monitored it. I did ultrasounds every year. I did biopsies every other. Everything always came back fine. There wasn't a lot of changes with the nodule that I had. So we just kind of, watched it. So to back up a little bit, so the thyroid is a butterfly-shaped, I think they call it a gland. It's not really an organ, but it's a gland, and it's across your neck. So you have, your two lobes, which would be like the wings of a butterfly, and then you have I think it's called an isthmus. I'm probably saying that wrong too, but it's like the pole of your thyroid.
Okay.
And it's part of, like I said, the endocrine system. So basically it kind of carries messages to other parts of your body and to tell them, like, this is what you need to do and this is when you need to do it.
Okay.
Obviously it has something to do with our hormones. It, again, coordinates, what your body needs to do and how to function. It does work with our metabolism. It controls our metabolism, which is turning our food into energy, and all the cells in our body need energy to function.
Right.
And then it's also, there's a hormone that regulates our calcium in our body. And if you have too much calcium because it's broken or whatnot, you get those kidney stones people talk about.
Yeah.
And then obviously some other issues or whatnot. Right. So that's kind of, the fun medical stuff behind it.
Your lesson for the day, there'll be a quiz at the end.
Yes, there'll be a quiz at the end. I'll make it multiple choice. Don't worry.
Excellent.
And so obviously your thyroid and hormones affect pretty much every organ in our body. You've got the cardiovascular system, which is your heart and blood pumping in and out of your heart. You've got your nervous system. Some people may have heard of people being hypothyroid. They might have hypothyroidism, which is when their thyroid is slow or the metabolism is slow. People may also get an autoimmune disease, which would be Hashimoto's. And then you also have your hyperthyroidism, which is when it's your metabolism is extremely fast. And the autoimmune disease that could come with that would be Graves' disease that could come from either hypo or hyper. Well, Graves is hyper, Hashimoto's is hypo.
Okay.
And then you've got your digestive system that your thyroid has functioning in, how fast you digest your food, and then your reproductive, so fertility, things like that.
So it's kind of like the thyroid is kind of like a brain for your cells. I mean, your brain is your brain, but it kind of has its hand in everything. Yeah,
I mean, it's really important.
Yeah.
You need, your thyroid's important. So if you get your thyroid removed, then you're on medicine forever.
Ah, okay. Kind of supplement all the things that it controls.
Yeah. So there's different, when you do blood work and things like that, you're looking for different, things that you need to be looking for to make sure your numbers are correct and things like that. So just to give you a little science behind it and, medical,
it's the understanding.
Medical,
5
minutes.
You got to understand before you can, work or fix or, that sort of thing. So,
yeah. So then I decided to wait and watch. We monitored it. I ended up changing insurance. So my endocrinologist didn't take my insurance anymore. So I stopped going for a little while. I found out that my regular doctor could monitor. So I have to monitor my A1C because I had gestational diabetes twice. I've been pregnant twice, and I had insulin with my youngest one when I was pregnant. So, your odds increase every time you have gestational diabetes in a pregnancy. Then your odds increase that you will probably get what they call type 2 diabetes. I have a huge family history of diabetes, so a lot of it's genetic as well.
Gotcha.
As much as I'd love to say, I can just change my diet and I'll be fine. It will help it, obviously, but right now it's controlled. I do take medicine for it, and then I do check it every year, my A1C. And right now it's like the pre-diabetic range, which is where it's kind of stayed.
Okay.
Until just recently, but we'll get into that in just a minute.
Yeah.
So, so my doctor monitors my blood sugars as well as my, giving me my ultrasounds and my biopsies for my thyroid. So then pandemic hit. So we're like in 2020-ish.
Yeah.
And the whole world shut down. So I didn't go to doctor appointments. Life was uncertain and, crazy. And I was being teacher and mom and
Yep.
all this, fun stuff. And I started to have symptoms. So my symptoms were I had extremely, extremely dry skin. My hair got really, really dry, like to the point where it was really weird. Actually, I had like a line of like really dry hair and it broke. And so it looked like I had bangs.
Huh.
It was, I asked my hairdresser, like, how do we, like, why is this happening? And she's
Right.
like, I don't know. And this was before I knew, things were going on with my thyroid.
Huh.
I felt like I had a really raspy voice. I felt like I had something stuck in my throat. I could eat like carrots or crackers and it would almost get like stuck in my throat.
Oh, wow.
I felt like I didn't feel like it was. I'd raise my hands up. Like if you raise both your hands up above your head, it felt like someone was choking me. I was very tired. It was a different kind of exhaustion I was feeling. The world was shut down. So
Right.
my work, closed. So it wasn't like, I was trying to, figure out the pandemic through working and still being a mom and maintaining the house and, figuring the world out.
Right. It was quote unquote easier to just like be the mom as opposed to
Yeah.
balancing everything.
Yeah. So I was kind of like, why am I so tired? Like, I don't know. And then I thought, well, maybe, everyone talked about like, just with everything changing that a lot of people had a lot of hard times with it. And I was
Chronic
like, I don't know,
fatigue and
maybe
yeah.
this is my hard time, like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. And, I kind of noted it in my mind. And I was kind of like, well, I haven't had my sugars checked. I haven't been checking my thyroid. Maybe I should go back to an endocrinologist and just make sure things are okay. I kind of took 2020 as a year to kind of really get back into being really healthy. I was working out every day,
Good,
which
yeah.
I blamed my dry skin and my dry hair on because I was taking showers all the time. I wasn't just sitting here smelling up.
Right, right.
And then, and then I was like, well, maybe I'm just tired from that. I don't know. So I went and in like end of 2021, I finally got around to making an appointment. My mom actually was talking to a neighbor on her block whose children were going through some fertility issues, and they had a really good endocrinologist that they had used. And so I was like, okay, well, because sometimes fertility obviously can be, an endocrinologist might be involved with that
Right, with
because
the
it
hormone
has to do
thing
with
and
hormones.
yep.
So I was like, okay, well, she came with this endocrinologist came with, good reviews. And so I called her and set up an appointment, which took a few months because she was very busy.
Always when you
And
need things it takes forever.
right. So in April of 2022, I ended up having an ultrasound done. I had blood work done and I had a biopsy. Everything came back fine. And then she obviously saw it was large. And because of all the symptoms I started having, because I was like, well, like, here's what's been going on for like the last like year and a half. She was like, yeah, we might want to think about just removing it. Like, it's been a while, like, it needs to come out. And I was like, well, I feel like okay, other than all these symptoms I just told you.
So is it matter so that we all understand? Is it removing the thyroid or is it removing just that whatever the mass was?
So the endocrinologist suggested removing the whole thyroid. So
Okay.
that would be a thyroidectomy, which is the whole thyroid.
Okay.
You can do half, which would be sometimes it's called a hemi or just a lobectomy because you're just taking the lobe out.
Okay.
And then when you do half and you go back and get the other half removed, then that would be a completion.
Okay. And
So
she was suggesting all of it.
Yeah, so she was suggesting a full thyroidectomy. I didn't want to do that because I was like, well, I don't want to be on meds forever, the rest of my life, and I don't want to gain a ton of weight, and
right.
selfish reasons. But I also I just wasn't sure about it. It was very scary. It was the unknown. Fear can be very scary, and it can kind of prevent us from really knowing what's best. So I was like, well, I'll meet with the surgeon and I'll think about it. So I met with the surgeon and she was like, I've looked at your ultrasounds, I've looked at your biopsies, I've looked at your blood work. She's like, we can do half. And I was like, awesome. That's okay. Like, and she's like, 15% of the people have to go on meds, but that means 85% usually don't have to do meds. So I was like, awesome. Okay. I can do this. Like, that's not so scary.
Right.
It's a major surgery though, and it's your neck.
Yep. Yeah, there's lots of important things there.
Yeah, so I was like, well, I'll think about it. So I did. I thought about it for a while. I had a follow-up appointment with my endocrinologist in September, so it was like 6 months or so. My symptoms weren't getting better. They were, in fact, probably getting a little worse. So when I met with my endocrinologist in September, I was like, I talked to my family, I've talked to some friends, and it was like, you know what, it's time. Like, I've been watching and waiting. It's starting to now affect me. I need to take care of this. So I was okay doing the half. And so all of a sudden it was like October came and I'm having surgery. I remember telling the surgeon, like, if you go in there and you think it looks gross or the other half, we should probably take it out or anything. Like, if you have any issues with it, the way it looks, if you think it's cancer or anything, take it out. Yeah. Take the whole thing. I don't care.
Already open. You might as well just grab what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She didn't. She only took the half. And surgery itself, I was extremely anxious. I didn't know really what to expect. I had jumped on some, just Google and, looking at pictures. So I kind of knew what my neck might look like.
Right.
Which
is kind of a catch-22. You kind of want to know, but you kind of don't.
Yes. Because then you hear really horrible,
yep.
You have got the extremes of these horrible experiences that people have experienced, and you're like, oh my God.
And I'm not saying don't do your research. I'm not saying what you did was wrong or bad or anything else. I'm just, it's that weird fine line that I think each person has to conquer, because
yes.
If you're sitting at home sneezing and you look up sneezing and then you have cancer and it's like, no, you don't, you probably just have a cold. Odds are.
Right. A little dust, got in you.
Right. And I kind of did the same thing. I mean, mine was, my experience with surgery was more emergency and immediate, but I would look up what is, when you have a scar, a foot long, what does that do? And I was like, oh, great. Never taking my shirt off again. I'm bathing in everything here. So look and be knowledgeable. But yeah, there is that catch-22 of you can kind of scare yourself into something,
Yeah. Well, and I think if you go into it knowing I'm going to read really extreme cases and I have to take that nugget of information, but not be like, oh my God, that's what's going to happen, because then you can read, the other 80% that yes, this is what my experience was. And every experience may be a little different. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not always the extreme, my whole neck came off, it's not going to happen to everybody.
Yep.
So then I had the surgery, and
now was it that she did not find anything else? I mean, you're obviously you're under, so you weren't chit-chatting it away. I mean, what do you see? But did it seem like she just was like, no, I'm taking the half and that's it, or there was nothing there?
No, she knew from the lobe that she took out, that's where the cancer was. Okay. She left the other half. I have nodules on the other half, so it wasn't like she was leaving this clean, healthy-looking other half of the thyroid.
Gotcha.
that's another story for another day about the medical system.
Gotcha. Yep. Bedside manner, and yep,
Yeah.
I'll chime in on that
I
one too. On that
Yeah, I
episode.
do have opinions on that. Why there was a half versus a full at the time,
Mm.
but and I do know that with thyroidectomies, and thyroid cancer, they're trying to be a little bit more conservative. I think a long time ago it was just we're taking the whole thing.
Gotcha.
Whereas now a lot of people can do those hemis and just function with half of their thyroid. They don't need meds, and they're okay, and they go on, and everything's okay. But yeah, so that she took the half, and I just had like a cut, across my neck, and it was just like glued. I wasn't sure if I was going to get stitches. I didn't know, some people have drains coming out of their neck, and I wasn't sure. And I remember waking up in the recovery room, and my throat was killing me. I mean, it was like the worst sore throat ever.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's all done. And the nurse was like, yeah. And she's like, do you want some crackers? I was like, why the fuck would you give me crackers? I just, my throat is on fire. No, I don't want crackers. Can I have some ice or something?
Yeah.
I mean, it was so weird. I was just like, why would you ask that? But, I mean, she probably just gives crackers to everybody and didn't,
And it's that weirdness of, like, they do this every day and you don't. So it's kind of like, same thing with me when I had my surgery and I came to. I looked at the nurse when I was in the room already and, already stapled up. And I was like, are we done? Because all I remember is going to sleep and then I'm waking up and I'm like, was that it?
Right.
2 seconds? Great.
Right. That was the best sleep I ever had. Yeah. That was the best nap. Can I do it again?
Yeah.
Just don't cut me. Just put me to sleep.
Exactly.
So recovery was fine. I had opted to stay in the hospital for the night just because the only other surgery I had was when I was 8 and I had my tonsils out. And my mom tells me I bled everywhere and it was horrible. I remember staying in the hospital for a couple days. I got actually really sick. And I still remember, there was this nurse, I swear she was an angel, but I think it was just the lighting of it was nighttime, and I just remember this, beautiful nurse. She had this beautiful, brown hair, and she just was, lit up, and she comes in, and she was just checking on me, and, I had asked her for a popsicle, and she's like, oh, yeah, I'll get you one, and she was so nice, and that's really the only thing I remember about my tonsils being out was that moment in the hospital was, just this nice nurse that, back then I was like, she had to be an angel. And,
mysterious.
But yeah, so that was my only experience was I gotten really sick. So I was like, well, if I, decide to, bleed out or whatever, I want to be in the hospital where I should be, not, miles away.
Yep.
So, and that brought some comfort too, because I knew I'd be monitored. I'd be an easy patient. I'd be like, you don't have to check on me. I'll ding you if I need you.
Right.
Type of thing. So I'm just taking a bed. Sorry. But the night nurses were really nice, and I didn't get much sleep because I had a lady who probably needed some help. And whether it be mental health help or she needed some different meds or something, but she was very agitated. And
was she calling for the Muffin Man like in that commercial? Have you ever seen that commercial? I think maybe it's not a commercial. Maybe it's just a meme. Someone's in the hospital and they're like, the Muffin Man? And you go, do you know the Muffin Man? The Muffin Man!
Yes. No, she would have said that. I could have started singing, the Muffin Man song. Do you know the Muffin Man? But no, I'm pretty sure was throwing her walker around. Oh. She was screaming for a nurse. I mean, it was to the point, it was 2 a.m. and I was ready to be all right. I just called her, Terrible Teresa, because that's what I called her. And I was ready to walk myself over there in my little walker and my little hospital gown and be listen to me. Let's have a chat. I was ready to be what can I get you? What are your needs right now that are not being fulfilled?
I feel for you, but please shut up. Yeah.
Right. I'll have some empathy for you, but let's get through this. What can we do a little differently?
Right.
But, yeah, the nurse came in. He's like, oh, because then I had to turn on my TV, and he's like, oh, you're still awake? And I was like, yeah, my neighbor Teresa here is my 2 o'clock alarm clock. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, you guys are handling this very appropriately. Because I could hear a lot of what they were saying, and then I could hear, her responses, and I was like, wow. I'm like, I give you guys props, because your jobs are nurses do not have the easiest jobs. I mean, some days they have really fun patients, and other days, they've got the harder patients that, you just got to get through and make them comfortable and do your best.
Yeah. And you fully recovered.
Yeah, so my wound itself has, fully recovered. I can hardly notice this. I don't think anyone really else notices it unless I say something, but they'll be like, oh yeah, I see it now. So my wound healed really well, but emotionally, physically, it was extremely hard recovery. I did end up having to go on meds.
Okay.
I ended up being extremely allergic to the generic thyroid medicine that they gave me, which is...
Oh no. We're going to take a quick break here in 1 second. You guys can watch me on the video. Oh no. Pause. No, here, I'll just do this. Hey Siri, call Jules.
Did you mean Jules? Calling Jules mobile.
So we lost ya.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'm going to send the invite again. Let me do this way. Because I think it's a different code, but let's see.
I like to complicate things, apparently.
Oh, no. This is what happens. I don't know if it's the same code or not. But sure. All right, so email is sent.
Sorry. I always click on it.
Let's get back to here. And we're waiting. That's our waiting music. We'll keep you on just in case. And the cool thing is we'll do this. Just hang up there. Okay. Hey, this is what happens with live recordings. You guys get like the front seat. But we'll get Jules back. We'll get back into the story. And hopefully it all helps you. Hopefully there's something in here as part of the story that you can relate to. Hopefully it's not the being diagnosed, but it's maybe getting through something that is difficult or, life's little obstacles. There she is.
All right, we're back.
All right. Now, when I said I wanted to do 2 parts with you, it's not in the same day. It's supposed to...
Well, that's what I do. I have that special little, technology in me don't always vibe.
Oh, you and Danelle. That's why we don't buy her new things. She gets the hand-me-downs from me.
Go to the store and break the cashier,
Right. Card doesn't work.
all the time.
Yeah. So the behind-the-scenes video, they'll have something fun to watch. Got to chat with them. So we're back. So we're to 2023, right? You're healed. You're happy with your scar. You don't look like Juno from Beetlejuice with smoke coming out of your neck.
No.
And so where are you at now?
Yeah. So while waiting for pathology reports, before I left the hospital, actually, I asked my doctor, hey, do you think anything weird or whatever? And she's like, well, we'll talk to you about pathology in my office in 2 weeks. And when she said that, I was like, oh, that's a weird thing to say. So then I started thinking oh, this might be really serious, more serious than I think it might be. So,
which is probably opposite of what I would think. If you're not talking about it right now, I'm like, oh, it's nothing to worry about. I got 2 weeks.
Right. But then she said that, and I was like, huh. Because, sometimes doctors will be like, no, I think it's, we'll see, but, it looked okay. Or, I suppose she's not going to say, well, it might have not looked good. She's not going to say that. So she's going to say, well, we'll talk about it. So.
Okay.
So actually, how I was told that I had cancer was I went to my regular doctor for a tick bite, because then I was like, oh my God, I just had my thyroid removed. Like, I have a tick bite. I don't like the way it looks. It's weird. Is it okay? And the doctor was like, yeah, you're fine. I was like, okay, just want to make sure. So then I was obviously in there. I was updating the file about how I had the surgery. And in the meantime, I was checking like my electronic chart all the time. Like, what is my pathology reports? Like, what does it say? It wasn't released. But the doctor could see it. And so he was like, I have the, pathology right here. And he's just like starts to read it. And the only word I heard was carcinoma. And I know that's cancer. And I just started crying. And I was like, it's fine. It's okay. Because I always tell myself, it's fine. Everything's fine. You're fine. It's fine. Even when it's not. But I always tell myself that. And he was like, okay. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm like, I'm going to see my surgeon in like 2 weeks to go over it. It's okay. And, I got myself together, and he was like, I think realized like, oh shit. Like, I just told her that she has cancer, like, oh. So he was like, I'm really sorry. Like, I hope it's okay that I shared that with you. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Well, it's my chart. I need to know.
Right. I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. So he's like, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, I know, it'll be fine. And so I left. I went to my car and I lost it, because I'm going to web off here a minute. But my experience with cancers have been a death sentence. You get cancer, you die. And, it started with, all my grandparents. Well, 3 of my grandparents all died of cancer. I was there. I've lost a lot of people to cancer, and I've been there while they transitioned from this earth world to the spirit world. I used to think it was a curse, and a lot of therapy has made me kind of look at it a little differently, that it's actually a blessing that I get to be there. But so I was, my grandparents all passed away. And obviously Jackson, Donna's little guy,
right,
he passed. I had dogs that have had cancer and passed. Donna passed. My brother-in-law, Steve, he also had cancer. He had melanoma. And so get your yearly skin checks. And when in doubt, cut it out. That should be everybody's thing, is just every year go and get your skin checked, because, early prevention is key here, especially with melanoma and skin cancer. If it, skin cancer turns into the melanoma, it is a horrible, horrible cancer. Not that any of the other cancers are not. They're all horrible.
Right.
But melanoma is not nice. So he passed, and that was hard, to watch, that. And then Donna obviously passed away. So there's just, and your dad was, got cancer and passed. And, so there's so many people that you just hear, they had cancer, they got sick, and they died. And so automatically it's like, oh my God, I have cancer, and I'm going to die. And then I was like, but I have kids, and, oh my gosh, what is this going to look like? And I'm going to lose my hair. And, you think all these thoughts.
Right.
And it's scary, and it's lonely, and you're like, oh my gosh. So the weird thing about thyroid cancer is a lot of people will be like, well, that's the easy cancer. That's the best cancer to have. And I'm always like, really? Because 1, I wouldn't want any cancer. And 2, is it easy? Because, after I had half of it removed, I healed, my wound healed fine, but like my emotional state, I'm an emotional person anyways. And I'm usually like, about 110% emotional. My family might say I'm a little bit more. But then when this happened and I got it removed, it was like 347%. I'm like standing there. You could have been like, hey, Julie, how's it going? And I'd be like, like bawling my eyes out. And and then I start laughing because I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm crying for. like, what are we doing? And, it was really hard recovery that way. I didn't feel good. I had no energy. It took everything in me to get up and get out of bed and go to work and then come home and function as a mom and, as a partner and, making cooking meals and cleaning the house and just living life and like doing activities. And I do think part of that, because the thyroid does function with like depression and things like that. I do think, that was some depression. There were times that I was like, is this what like real depression is? When people say like I was depressed.
Well, and it's that weird mix too, where I've always said like it's not that there's certain things in life I know that they're real, right, and I know that they exist. To me, addiction I don't understand because I'm not an addictive person. My dad was. My dad could not quit smoking. He tried so many times, and I couldn't understand it. It's just like just don't have it. Like I love beer. I love other things in life, but if I don't have to have it. Like if I don't have beer for a couple weeks or months, I'm still good. So I don't understand. So same thing like with like women. Obviously, I've been married for almost 19 years now, and with one for the same one for about 24 years now, which just boggles my mind. But when you guys go through the fun of the month, I don't understand how you're just sitting there and just cry. Like, what thought came to you? Nothing. What were you thinking about? Nothing.
Sometimes you just cry.
I mean, I can sit there and just cry too because my dad passes through my mind or something else. But like, so it's interesting to hear that like with you kind of questioning like, is this depression or what is happening to me because I'm not. You didn't know.
Right. And it wasn't, I've had, I'm sad and, I would say maybe light depression, but nothing like this. That's
kind of like quote unquote normal, like, daily things of I could lose weight or I could, whatever.
Right. Yeah. Or, I'm not doing is my life fulfilled enough? Am I doing stuff with purpose? And,
right. And I'm not belittling any of that. It's just more, the more common feelings.
Yeah. And so, I had, speaking of periods, my periods were whack, irregular, and they used to be like clockwork. I'd be super cold, and I'm always a hot person, and I hate being hot, and now I'm like freezing cold, and I was like, what is going on? Just my sugars ended up increasing, so they got really high. Or higher for me. They weren't probably high for like, a type 1 diabetic is probably like, oh, I'd love to have those sugar numbers. But for me, my sugars were high. Okay. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? And I was like, this is what life is like now. Like, this sucks. Like, this is not what I thought life was going to be like. I'm on meds. I had this huge allergic reaction, a rare allergic reaction to the generic version. And my whole face swelled up. I'm pretty sure no one, like my doctors, I don't think believed me. They were like, well, what did you just eat? I'm like, nothing unusual and nothing that I don't eat all the time. Like, the only thing that's different is I've been taking this med for 3 days. Like, this is not normal.
This looks like I ate 14 pizzas. I swear I didn't.
Yeah, and it hurt, and I could, like, barely open my eyes, and I had to go to work, and so I wore sunglasses, like, because that's going to hide my face. But I was like, well, at least they won't see my scary eyes. And it was so embarrassing, and, I was like, telling my families that I work with, I was like, so I'm wearing my sunglasses because I'm having a really bad allergic reaction right now. So just bear with me. And they were like, oh my gosh, like, we are so sorry that you are going through this. And I'm like, yeah, fun times. And I can laugh about it now because I looked absolutely ridiculous. And afterwards, like, my face was like bright red. It was like scaly because it was so dry because it had been so puffed up. I mean, it was bad. But yeah, so all of that was really, really hard. And so I went back to the doctor. So obviously I had blood work. And my concern was, how do you know you have it all? How do you know?
Right.
Like, just because you took this out, like, how do you know? And I want to be clear here. Every single ultrasound and biopsy came back benign and okay. And I was like, and now I have cancer. And so it's hard for me to now trust any test because I'm like, how do you know that's benign? How do you know that I don't have it? Like, how do you know?
Right.
And
Have you
they,
had, which is now piqued my interest. Like, is there a way, like, have you looked up or researched or anything that to retest? I mean, I guess it does boggle my. I'm at a loss for words too because you took a sample, you said we're good, but I'm
hmm
not. So how would you
right,
ever? How would you have ever found that I'm not okay?
right. And I think the only way they would have ever found it is if it just kept growing. And then eventually maybe the sample size would have been a bigger sample size of the cancers. But um,
Gotcha. So it's kind of like, I mean, I'm not, I'm making light of, a heavy subject, but not of your situation. So it's kind of like
mhm,
if you're scooping out ice cream and you want the cookie piece, you got part of it and it's okay, but had they gone deeper,
right.
you would have scooped
Or
out and been like, oh, hey, there's cookies in here.
yeah, or like scooped a little different area, or maybe they
Gotcha.
just scooped enough, and the cookie dough was right under there. Versus like, hey, get that whole scoop and a couple more.
Right. But then that's a
Um,
good thing with knowing symptoms.
yes,
Again, it's that catch 22 of like, yes, every time you sneeze or cough, you don't have cancer.
right,
But if you do and they don't see it on all the tests and scans that they could, which is what we rely on, but you have other symptoms, pay attention to the rest of your body, even if it's a throat thing, a leg
right,
thing, pay
yeah,
attention to how you're breathing, how you're swallowing carrots, like how you're doing the things.
yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, and I'm pretty in tune with my body because of all the fertility stuff that I had to do
Mm-hmm.
prior to doing IVF. You do all the, take your temperature and do this and do that, and when do you ovulate, and I mean, I was pretty in tune with my body. It
Mm-hmm.
just, I think life kind of took over a little bit, and then when the pandemic hit, it really allowed me to slow down again and really pay attention,
Yeah.
because we are our own best advocate. I mean, I have to advocate for myself, and
Right.
everybody listening has to advocate for themselves. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, doctors are very knowledgeable. Let's give them credit. They are life saving. They have more
right,
of the technical and knowledge, but they're not us. They're
right,
not experiencing. They could tell you, yeah, it's just gas. But if you had
hmm
it for more than a week and you have other symptoms of some sort, they can tell you like, oh yeah, it's this. Oh, you didn't unless you tell them.
right,
They
yeah,
can't feel around and be like, oh, I think you have gas, or I think you,
right,
whatever. So yeah.
yeah,
And so that brings us to now. So and then on Wednesday, which will make no sense to anybody if this doesn't come out before then,
right,
which it won't. We'll try to edit that. Let's start over. So, okay, so that brings us to now, where
hmm
you are now going in for a second surgery to remove the rest of the thyroid. Is that my understanding?
yeah. So, we've been kind of waiting and watching. So after my one half got removed, I did ultrasounds, I did blood work.
Mm-hmm.
I had an ultrasound in December because I was like, how do you know? How do you know? And she's like, well, let's do an ultrasound. At least like maybe that will kind of make you feel a little bit better. I was like, sure. And the one thing I do have to say, my endocrinologist is amazing. I mean, number wise, it's like, well, the blood work, blood work, blood work. And I've always been like, yeah, but again, my blood work's always been normal, but here I am, I had cancer. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I am not just numbers.
What's
You
the
have to
what's
go
the
off,
backup? Yeah.
right, like how I feel. And so she's been amazing listening because I did get an increase of my thyroid medicine, which has made all the difference. I feel so much better. I'm not 100%, but I feel so much better. And part of that is just telling her, like, this is not how I want to live my life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is not okay. Like, I know how good I can feel. This is not it.
Mm-hmm.
And so she really listened to me and upped my medicine, and it has made a world of a difference. So
Good.
I had an ultrasound in December, and then I had another one in May because it had been like 6 months. And I just didn't, call it intuition, call it just knowing my body, calling it
Mm-hmm.
just, I want to make sure that I don't want to, fool around with this. We're
Right. Right.
talking, this is serious stuff. So,
Yeah.
and just from December to May, there have been changes in the structure and of the nodules on the side that's left, indicating that it's likely cancer again.
Gotcha.
So it's going. I mean, I cried about it. I call my, one of my friends, Lisa, and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. And she's like, well, what, like, let's talk about it, talk it out. So, she helped me talk it out, and, the pros and the cons. And she's like, okay, but you're on meds, right? And I was like, yes, I'm already on meds. So it's not like I have to now go on meds again. Like, I'm on meds.
Right.
I've gone through it already. So I know kind of what to expect.
Right.
Obviously, getting the whole thyroid removed brings up, other risk factors and things like that, but nothing that can't be monitored in the hospital, nothing that they can't watch,
Right.
So it'll be fine. So I was like, all right, I'm like, I know, like, why am I going to wait more just to see how much more it changes? You know what I mean? Like,
and cancer being cancer, which we obviously still as humans don't have a grip on, is it going to jump somewhere else? Like, are you, like,
right.
however that works? Like, the first time you were kind of given the options of, like, we could monitor it, we could take it out, we could do half. It kind of seems like this time is more of, it's either take it out or, risk.
Take it out.
Yeah. I mean, risk it's spreading somewhere else.
Spread.
Yeah.
Yeah, because thyroid cancer, as much as it is an easy cancer and it's the best cancer to have, and thyroid cancer does have a really good, recovery and survival rate. I'm not going to discredit that, but I think, people's first, when they're like, oh, it's so easy. It's like, but this isn't the easy part. This is not easy. Yes, I did not have to go through chemo. I did not lose my hair. I have not had to do radiation yet. That may still be on the table, but it will be in a pill form. But I'll know more once I have my surgery and I get pathology back.
Right.
I do have a lymph node, so thyroid cancer does spread. It can go through the blood. If you have, I think, follicular can spread through the blood. Papillary, and I'm probably saying these all wrong, is usually through the lymph node. So I have papillary thyroid carcinoma with follicular variant. So it has characteristics of the follicular cancer.
Okay.
Those are a lot of big words
yeah.
for poor Julie to say.
Yeah. So the risk,
yes.
essentially the risk is higher for it to definitely get worse and spread.
Absolutely. I mean, it can absolutely, grow and move. So I did have one lymph node removed in my first surgery just because it was attached to the lobe, and that came clear, and my margins were clear, so that's good. So this time I do have a lymph node that keeps kind of showing up on my ultrasounds that I was like, can we just take that guy out? But I'll leave that up to the surgeon, only because, like, if this is a lymph node that, like, my body uses all the time for, like, drainage, that could be why it's showing up. And from my understanding, the ultrasound techs have to note anything that shows up. So maybe none of my other lymph nodes are showing up, but maybe I just had, like, postnasal drip. Maybe I'm fighting some allergies. I mean, it could be whatever.
Lots of
and
factors.
That little guy, keeps wanting to be seen. But in my mind, there's also a part of me that's like, but how do we know that it's not something more?
Right.
So they've tried to assure me that it's all good, but I was like, well, so I do want them to take, like, maybe a lymph node or two just to be sure that they got it and it's not spreading anywhere.
All gone, all clear, yeah.
And then after that, depending on what the pathology comes back as, I might not have to do, it's called RAI, which is radioactive iodine. It's like a pill. You swallow it, and then you're radioactive. You can't, to quarantine. You can't be around anybody. You have to.
Yep. I actually was introduced to that when I was going through my stuff in 2010. That's when it was not even out yet, and I was given the option, and I didn't need to do it. So thank God. But yes, I do remember all that. Where I did do the regular, like, IV type thing once, and it was kind of like, okay, show up at this time at this place, and we'll do this and whatever. And it's like, well, and make sure, like, you might be tired, you might not want to drive. I'm like, well, how am I getting there or getting home?
Right.
And like, well, don't bring anybody with you. I'm like, what? How am I getting there? You can't be. Are you guys trying to have kids? Because your wife would come if you sit in the back seat. So it was just odd. I had to sit in the back seat. We couldn't, it was just weird. But yeah, that was. So I understand the technology and medicine has come a long way.
Yes. So, we'll take it one step at a time. And, right now it's like, I'm so anxious about, it's a major surgery again.
Yes.
And, obviously going into it the second time, she's going to use the same, scar, she's going to cut up my scar and, take it out. And It's just the girls understand it. We've been through it once already. And it's just like, hey, I've got to take it out. And, they understand that my mom's going to help me. And, my sister will have her kids come over. So, the
Yeah.
girls can, have somebody to play with. So they're not just, on their iPads all the time.
Right, right. Well, and you have, like I said, we're doing this kind of in two parts in the sense that this is the pre-surgery things that
Yeah.
brought you to this point, and then we'll have you back when you're good and healed and ready to chit chat on the after, like what you felt,
Yeah.
what you went through for this time and all that sort of stuff, and it helps other people. Whether it's just knowledge, hey, I didn't know what a thyroid is, and I learned this, or whatever, or I know people are going through it, or I'm going through it, or whatever the case may be. And out of it, too, with not only your stuff, you've kind of been like an ambassador of shining the light and everything, and your sister is a part of something called Clear Ribbon. Is that...
Yeah.
So that's, and it's online. So let's give a shout out to them. Clear Ribbon. You can Google it, or it's ClearRibbon, one word. Dot com. I wanted to get it right. .com. So clearribbon.com, and they are advocates for helping people that are going through similar things of what you're kind of loss of, but theirs is the loss of
a spouse.
A spouse, okay.
Yeah, or significant other. So I briefly mentioned, my brother-in-law, Steve, he had melanoma. Get your skin checks yearly. I can't stress that enough. And he obviously, died, and it was really hard. And my sister, talks about kind of being in that fog. And so her and 3 other people who all lost their spouses to cancer, she actually... one of the board members that she's, partnered up this non-for-profit with, they met in the doctor's room while both her husbands were fighting, melanoma. I believe her husband had melanoma as well.
Oh, wow.
And they stayed connected even after Steve died, and they would go to his house and they saw him, and, they said their goodbyes to him, when his time was coming, and they stayed connected, and, the 4 of them, brainstorm this non-for-profit Clear Ribbon. And what it does is it kind of gives clarity through that fog. So they have short-term, involvement, where as soon as, you lose a spouse or significant other, then they, step in, and they're going to give, if there's children, they've got book bags, books about how do we talk about, cancer and death and, all of that. Because the one thing is not telling your children you're sick. Because then if you get a cold and you're like, I'm sick, and then kids kind of associate that with like, oh my God, you're going to die.
Yeah, every time I'm sick, I'm going to die, yeah.
Yeah, so it's okay to give it a word. And, our kids were really young. My sister's kids were young. My kids and my sister's kids are the same ages. And, that was the one thing that we were honest with them, is like, they have cancer. And when when Donna died, it was the same thing. It's like, Donna has cancer. And I guess in a way I'm teaching them that like cancer people die, but I also told them I had cancer, and I'm okay. And I think, and let me talk about my sister's thing, and then I'll circle back to that thought.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
So Clear Ribbon helps out right away on the short term, and then they go in kind of midway, that 3-month, 6-month, they check in, make sure everything's okay. In the short term, right away they're giving, gift cards. They've got, care coolers where people can put meals on it. They can put groceries.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sometimes people don't know what to do. So, hey, I'll order you some groceries, and they can put it in the care cooler so it stays cool.
It's the things you don't think of. Like, you don't want to ask for help, but you need help, but you don't know what you need. But yeah.
And that's what Clear Ribbon is about, is they know what it's like to be in that fog. And so they're able to provide those services. They do, home services. If you got to cut your yard, trim trees, if you need a maid, things to help you just function for a while. There's financial services that they can help offer. There's workshops they put together
Oh,
for,
cool.
widows and widowers.
And this is
Um,
this is just in Chicago, or is this a nationwide, or?
it's all over the U.S.
Oh,
So
wow.
you can go to their website and then you can reach out if you need their services, and they'll let you know. They do have some sponsorships where, um, you know, recently someone just passed away that someone knew, and they had some children, and they're kind of in that fog, and so they're able to. They have a small scholarship amount that they can get them services, groceries, and they're out on the west side of the states.
Okay.
So they also do events, like local events, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
that provide just kind of a connection for other children and individuals, widows and widowers, can come together and function and enjoy each other during these functions, and kind of know that they're not alone. And
Right. Yeah, like we
you
were
know,
talking about earlier, you're finding people that you feel alone, you're not,
yeah,
but until you make that connection and hear somebody else's story, then this is sounds like such a great outlet to be able to do that, and inviting to be like, hey, there's obviously we've been through it, so obviously we know not what you're going through specifically, your feelings or how your relationship was with the person, but we know our
right,
relationship and what we felt.
yeah.
So,
And they do then the long term too. So after a year, they check in like every 6 months, because your needs are going to change and
right.
the services are going to change. But yeah, so clearribbon, .com, definitely check it out.
Absolutely.
Um, and yeah. And I did want to circle back.
Yeah.
I do have brain fog is a real thing. I had to actually write it down because I was like, what was I just going to talk about?
I would have reminded you, but that's
And then I was like sitting there like, what was I going to circle back to? But so a lot of times, I was talking about, telling children, like giving it a name.
right.
And I don't want to make children to be afraid that, cancer equals death. And so I did tell them, hey, I've got thyroid cancer, and I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
What was their reaction?
I think the unknown, they weren't sure, because,
Okay.
there's a risk of your vocal cord nerve is right there. It could get nicked. And so I actually recorded myself singing, because, my youngest one likes me to still sing to her,
Yay.
to bed. So I actually recorded myself singing.
Right.
And because I was like, I don't know if my voice is going to change. I don't know.
Right.
So I think it was just kind of the unknown. I try to prep them as much as I could. Like, I'm going to have a cut here. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it'll be okay, And so they were kind of looking at it. It bruised, so they were kind of watching it, the over the days of it changing, and
Mm-hmm.
and then it, once the glue came off, it looked way better, and it was like I don't even think they noticed it anymore, which is fine. I hardly notice it anymore, but
Yeah.
we don't focus so much on the survivors, and like I said earlier, a lot of my experience with cancer has been a death sentence. You get
Mm-hmm.
cancer, you die. And we forget about the survivors. We forget about the people who do get cancer. I have 2 aunts that had breast cancer. They're doing all right. I had a neighbor who had breast cancer. She's doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people who do get cancer and they are okay. And we need to hold on to those too, because medicine can work,
Mm-hmm.
and we can get ahead of that. And those are the stories that, like, I really hung on to. Is, yes, it's very scary, and it's the unknown, but I'm trying to really hard to make sure this doesn't just kind of fall apart. I'm doing my ultrasounds, I'm getting my blood work,
Right.
I'm being aware of my body, and I'm remembering that there are a lot of people who have had cancer and they're still here.
Yeah, and it's again, not making light of the situation, but trying to put light to it. Same thing was with me. It was emergency. It was right now. I was bleeding internally. I was going to die, and things got fixed. And when you're laying in bed for weeks on end and you can't move because you're split from your chest to your navel, and you realize why they say it's core. I couldn't raise
Right.
my hand without it hurting because I'm just laying here. But you think a lot. You got a lot of time to yourself, and it taught me to slow down. Like,
Yes.
I'm hearing through your stories that it's teaching you to help teach others, be
Yes.
even more open, whether it's your kids, somebody else's kids, people you meet. It teaches you, yeah, if you let it go and you're like, whatever, I don't want to go through the surgery again and whatever, well, then you're back into the realm of the rest of us of like, you could die any day, which all of us could, but
Hmm.
your risk is higher to just not wake up tomorrow, as
Right.
opposed to somebody who doesn't have cancer who could also just not wake up tomorrow. You got to put it in
Right.
apples to apples, but your
Sure.
risk is higher. So, but now you're taking care of it and you're putting yourself back into the society and people of, okay, well, now I'm just as much as you could. You know, I don't have this
Hmm.
thing. And you get to help people with that and see that, hey, you know, you recorded yourself singing. You took time to explain things. The things that you wouldn't do if this didn't come into your life. Now, I'm not glad that it did. I'm not
Right.
happy
Right.
you're going through any of this at all. But because that's what it is, you get to realize and take a step back and go, oh, okay, time out. And that's what I did too through mine is I went, wow, maybe this is God's way of saying, slow your butt down. Like,
Yes.
it had nothing to do with being fast or being on caffeine or anything else. It was just time out. Like, let's
Right.
reassess how many hours you're working. Let's reassess what you're not doing. And, you know, and after that is when
Yes.
I became an actor in Florida. I was always an actor as a kid, but, you know, so I love that part of the story of you're able to look at things and go, how can I take the best out of it?
Yes, and I do that in a lot of things. You know, like I have been with people a lot when they've transitioned from, like I said, the earth world to the spirit world.
Right.
And I always was like, oh, that's such a curse. And then it was like, but let's look at the beauty in all that. Like, it's such, like, what an honor, you know, that I get to be there with people
Mm-hmm.
and animals. And, you know, I've lost a lot of really important people. You know, I've been there through those last moments with them, and just kind of looking at it a little bit differently. No, I don't want cancer. No, I don't want to have to be going through this, but I know at the end of the day, I'm going to be a better person because of it. And if
Mm-hmm.
that means I love a little harder, you know, I uh, live a little more, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, yeah, there's days that I check out and it's just like, you know, I
Yep.
need to check my anxiety and things like that. But then there's other days it's like, how can I be a better mom? How can I
Mm-hmm.
be a better partner? How can I be a better friend? And realizing that I'm not a burden,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, my story is not a burden. And if I can reach out to even one person that's like, you know what, I've been told, you know, I've got thyroid, you know, issues or whatnot, like, okay, yeah, get the tests, you know, get the blood work, stay on top of it.
Well, and yours is the cool part, is your story is so unique in the sense of you asked questions most people probably didn't think because it's like, oh, you don't have it, and they're like, okay, good, going home, or
Right.
you do have it, and here's what we're gonna do. Boom, that's the decision. You wavered in both, which I think is
Yes.
good because then you maybe somebody's like, ooh, maybe I should get a second opinion or double check or explain the numbers to me and help people understand. Yeah, and it doesn't mean you need to freak out, and every time somebody says you're good, you're like, am I? Am I? Am I? You
Right.
know, and go nuts. You
No, and I
kind of have to
think
trust them,
this,
but
yeah, and I, you know, it is what it is, and the you know, I don't know where they had gotten the biopsies and things like that. I think that's, you know, doesn't happen very often. I'm sure it does
right.
happen, but I don't, you know, when it comes to my thyroid, I question a lot
Mm-hmm.
more only because of this experience. But if I
Right,
have other things like my blood sugars, it's like I trust the doctors know what they're doing. And,
right, right.
you know, I'm also monitoring them. So, you know, I have a little bit of control in that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
but, but
And
yeah, I
you
mean,
don't have the control, you know, with the cancer, you know, like
no.
that. You know, going back with what you were saying before too, it's kind of like, you know, you have all these things where, yeah, you could get sad and depressed, and we all have our days, but
Sure.
at the same time, it's something that's happening where it's not like you did something to get cancer. You know,
Right.
you weren't, and even if you do all the things, I mean, how many people do we know, you know, drink bottles a day of alcohol and never get liver cancer or liver problems or
Right.
live out in the sun and their skin is perfect. Like it's
Yep.
just based on whatever. So it's not like you
Yeah.
ate a wrong cheeseburger and now you have thyroid cancer. You know, like
Right.
so there is that part where you in my opinion, you do have to release to say you're not in control of it. You
Right.
know, this is what's happening. So what are the options? What do we got to do? How can we make this, as a better part of the story? Which is your story, which is your tales, which brings me to tales. So tales for the show are the tests, the adventures, the lessons, the entertainment, and the successes. Which I could probably fill in the blanks for some of them for you now. If they're the same, great. But let's start out with T. What was maybe the biggest test so far in life? And it doesn't even have to be related to this at all. It could be,
Right.
you fell off your bike but got back on. I don't know.
Right. No, I mean, there's been a lot. When I think of what comes to mind right away is my fertility journey. That was a huge test because there's the science piece and then there's the moral piece, and so that was a huge test in itself. Obviously, I think of Steve and his death, and Donna and her death, and that was hard. It was really, really hard. And I've had to do a lot of therapy. I've gone to grief therapy. I had some PTSD from Steve's passing that I had to work through. That affected a lot of my life that, I kind of keep to myself because there's a lot there.
Yeah. Mental health is so important.
Yes.
So important.
Yes. And, and then this has been a test too, because it's showing me that, you can have different experiences and different trials and tribulations, and you can get through things. And, I'm not sitting here, crying every night or anything like that. I'm much more emotional now because I'm stressed out. I'm anxious about the surgery. I just want to, I want to get to the other side of it. I want to be in the recovery room. It's the unknown, up until then. Like, once I know I'm good, I'll be fine. But
yeah, once you can plan the second episode on Kurzology, which is the most important.
Then we're good. Then we're good. Yeah. So, I mean, just those life lessons of really tuning in and being kind and gentle to yourself too, and allowing yourself some grace. A lot of people, it's like you can't cry, especially if you're a male. Like, oh, you can't cry and have emotions, and it's like, but you can and you should, and it's okay to honor those. Yeah, and it's okay to do that. And I think all of those experiences, the deaths and the fertility and the cancer has really taught me that it's okay to be open and share my story. And, if you want to listen, great. If not, that's okay too.
Yeah. Things test you, and you've kind of come up with these different things, and I would love to skip to L, but we gotta go. Let's do an order. What's an adventure? What's a big adventure that you've kind of enjoyed, maybe?
Yeah, I being outside. I mean, just hiking in the woods. That's an adventure for me. And I tell you what, the biggest adventure I went on, one of the biggest ones, is when I think of what does adventure mean? I had just gotten divorced. I'd never traveled by myself, and I took that year and did things alone. I went to the bar and had my first beer by myself. I went out to eat by myself. I went to the movie. I did all these things that can show I can do that. I don't need somebody else. I'm as embarrassed as I am sitting there eating by myself. People do it all the time. It's no big deal. Now it's I can't believe I was that was a challenge. But I went to visit my aunt out in Seattle, and I got the ticket. I got myself there. I flew out. I mean, it was such an amazing trip, and it was so healing. My aunt's, more of a hippie, and her children are right there with her, and it was amazing, and it was fantastic, and that by far has been one of the best adventures I have had. When you think of traveling and things like that.
Yeah. And I could probably answer the lessons for you because you've given us 17 throughout the episode, which is awesome. Does one stand out as in right now in today as we talk? This is what you're living as a lesson.
Yeah, self-care, and I feel like self-care gets thrown around like the word trauma. And when I'm talking about self-care, I'm not talking about those let's have a bubble bath and let's read a book. And, like, nobody has time for that. Self-care can be as simple as not cooking dinner that night. Maybe it's just going to bed early. Maybe it's not doing laundry or cleaning my house tonight. Like, you know what? My laundry can wait one more day. Like, it'll be okay.
Taking that step back.
Yeah. And just knowing it's okay. And also just talking about my life sometimes. I'm can be very closed, and then other times if you get me in the right spot, I can go on and on and on,
Yeah.
But that kind of self-care of really, doing something for yourself that can matter. Later today I'm going to get a massage. I haven't had a massage for a long time, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to massage those knots out of my neck.
Exactly.
Because I probably should, like, it's just doing some self-care, doing realistic things. And I'm not doing self-care all the time, but I'm doing it enough to know that I'm taking care of myself.
Right. You gotta have the me time. Yeah. So in that realm, is there something that entertains you?
Yeah, I love live music.
Ooh, okay.
Just going out. There's a local bar in McHenry over by the river, and they have, live music all the time. So
Nice.
we've been, kind of going there. And, anytime I can, another small town nearby has bands, like I don't know if it's a restaurant that has these bands, but they have them outside. And so you can just sit there and listen, and you don't have to go out and eat or anything, but you could just hang out. So definitely live music is the best entertainment for me.
Enjoy the talents of somebody else. I always love that. I love
Yes.
going to see, some specific, I'll give him a shout out here, Joe Bonamassa and other people that can do things that I can't. Like
Yes.
I don't want to play guitar, and I cannot. And I love seeing people do things that I can't. So, and finally, as we come to a close, what is, I've been doing this for the past couple things. I love asking this like a political reporter, right? So
Right.
so I have one question, and there's humor in it. I have one question. What is your definition of success, and what is a big success? What would you consider success in your life? So obviously it's not one question, it's two. That's what they do.
Right. I think success is just doing the best that you can with what you've got going on right in that moment. And, one of my biggest successes are, here's a cheesy mom answer, is obviously my kids. They are the best thing that I've ever created in my life. They're great kids. They teach me lessons all the time in itself. And, the fun thing is I've never their mom in that moment before. Like I've never been their mom right now in this moment with this issue or with this situation.
Right.
And so it's kind of like we're both learning, we're all learning together. And, I always joke that, if I do something like, oh, I didn't get them some app that they wanted, that I'm like, well, let me, they don't have TikTok or anything like that.
Right.
Like, you don't need it. And it's like, put it on the list for your therapist one day. You got to go to bed at 8:30 tonight. Tell your therapist someday,
Your mom didn't get you TikTok, but how many times
Right.
did you go fishing? Yeah, that's...
Right. What kind of fun Disney vacation did you get? And,
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
How many times did we take you to the pool? But yeah, so they definitely are what I would say is my life success for sure.
I like it. And I feel like the people that usually say something like that don't really mean it, but I know that you do, because
Absolutely.
It's such a unique, people usually brush it off with not like your detail, but those who are like, oh, having kids. Like, I never thought I had kids, so I had kids. But your journey with what you had to go through to have kids, let alone the success of they are here. Like,
Yes.
they were made. Like,
Yeah.
they're so that's a success not only for you probably personally, but somebody looking outside is like, that's a success for, the miracle of helping people who have whatever issues. Again, another podcast. We're gonna have you on like 6 or 7 times, but like, and that too is truly a success.
Yeah.
And I think it was a successful chat with you. I could go for hours. You're one of the very few people that, even with the couple parts that we got going, it's going to be hard to to edit this, and maybe I won't edit as much. But I do want to honestly thank you from the bottom of my heart, Julie, for taking the time. Your time is valuable. I treasure our friendship, the 26 years we've known each other, and it's just gotten better and grown in that 26 years. Even if distances has gotten farther apart, I feel like, we've kind of gotten closer.
Yes. Yeah, and thank you for having me on your show. I love this adventure of yours, and
Absolutely.
I think you're going to rock it. And I just thank you for letting me talk about my tale and, hopefully, connecting with others. And, I always say our chats are kind of like those 2 a.m., late night chats where you stay up all night talking and then you walk away and you feel like you've really connected with that person and learned something more about them, and you just feel like, okay,
it's like energized, like it's 2 a.m. but you want to go do a marathon. So
right.
But no, I love it. I genuinely appreciate it. Please keep in touch. We will be in touch. I'll let you do your thing and self-care and enjoy the massage.
Yes,
and
thank you.
we'll give you a couple weeks after to recover and have you back to tell your journey of post-op.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yes.
You guys take care.
Yeah, so everybody out there listening, thank you very much. Please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll catch you next time.